Hello, and welcome to the very first of my video accompanied demos to go in tandem with the Gimme Babble podcast with myself, David Hochbaum, and artist David Stupakis. Purpose of these demos is to give a very brief and bare-boned idea of how I utilize certain techniques in my work that are mentioned throughout the podcasts. With David, we're going to touch upon many different process techniques, tools, and so I want to try to create a few very short examples of what we mean when we say certain things. And in this instance, I'm going to be dealing with carbon transfers, which is a very big part, or has become, at least in the past 10 years, a very big part of my toolbox of techniques. Carbon transfers, basically, just to run through it real quick, are photocopies onto clear transparency paper done with dry toner copies. I'm going to mention that a few times, and what I mean by dry toner is that it's not like inkjets where the inks are activated with water and will bleed, but are done with dry toners so that when applying them with the gel, it doesn't immediately activate the inks and make it a lot less durable. You can be a lot more aggressive with dry toner copies. So I'm going to go through the application and removal of how I do it. I'm not necessarily trying to teach anybody how to use tools. I'm trying to show them how I wind up using them and maybe help in any variation that other people might want to, incorporate in their work. So what I have to be ready are some works to apply, and then some coffee to drink to keep myself going, because it's a very important tool. I'm going to keep it simple, working on a couple small pieces. Of course, I also do very large works, medium-sized works that incorporate this technique, but it's a little bit more tricky and advanced. Maybe get into it later on. Right now, I'm just going to start with simple, easier to understand, and explain, because I'm not used to this. This is the very first time I'm making one of these demos, so it's going to be of the poorest quality sound, poorest quality editing, and hopefully it gets better from here. Anyhow, thank you for watching, and here we go. Let's apply transparency. I'm going to do a quick demo for you here on applying images for carbon transfers to create pieces like this, collages of separate different pictures that have been photocopied onto dry toner acetate paper, plastic sheets pretty much. And I go to FedEx to do this because they've got the kind of copy machines that have the dry toner, unlike the inkjet printers, which will bleed. So I'm going to show you how I do it, just applying the images, which down the road lead to collages, not unlike these. It's where the collaged transfers are nice and flat, layered, and can be colored, whatever you like. But I'm simply going to show you how I apply it. Now, you have your panel. I'm using a gessoed piece of MDF, and your images, which are photocopies onto acetate paper using dry toner. Can't stress that enough. Dry toner inks will work best, or work for what I do. You want to have your image laid out so you know where they're going to go. I'm going to place these guys right over there. That's their spot. Okay, so I know where they go. I can slip them away. Something you want to make sure of is any pencil or any markings that you have that you don't want showing up. You want to get rid of that. You could use eraser. I always do a little extra sanding, because anything that you want gone after you lay down the gel is much more difficult to get rid of without getting aggressive with the piece. So this is just to make it easier for me after. I peel these, which I'm going to do after a few days. Okay, so you got your images. You check for the ink side, which is much more dull. The shiny side is there, and the dull side's there. That's the side with the ink. So then you need gel medium. I use a matte acrylic gel. I've always used matte. It does work with glossy, I'm sure, but this is just the material that I'm comfortable with, so I continue to use it. Now, I make these little vats. I take the gel out of the main vat. I put it in one of these smaller containers so that it can dry out a little bit, you know, leave like a loose cover. So over a few days' time, it gets nice, thick, and gooey, because you want a nice, thick, and gooey gel to make, and makes it the whole process go a lot quicker and easier to actually line up your image afterwards. It doesn't slide around as much, as you'll notice when you try. Okay, so you got the ink side. You put the gel on the ink side, of course, because that's the stuff you want to rip off the plastic later. Get down, cover the whole image. I wind up leaving some border. Sometimes, depends. You can do like very, very fine collage work up to the line. In this case, I'm doing it, I'm going to paint afterwards, so I don't need to cut it right up to the line. I got a lot of extra material to work with, which actually will make it easier to remove later. Get it in its spot, just where you want it. Make sure you want it there. Give it a little bit of a push. Squeeze out some of that gel. I like to save it, because stuff is like liquid gold for collaging, doing transfers. Take a look at it. Once you're certain that it's exactly where you want it, then you can give it more of a strong push, working your way from the center out to begin with, because working from the center out will prevent it from sliding around as much as you're doing this. Give it a nice few pushes. Make sure all that gel underneath spread out well. You get some hairs, will always wind up popping up, but can be dealt with later. Don't need to worry about that now. And once you're sure, absolutely sure it is, then you can go in and really spread that gel underneath, smooth it out so you got a nice thin layer. You don't want it too thick. You don't want it too thin. If you go too thin, you wind up spreading all the gel out. You're going to notice different air pockets appearing. You don't want any of that, because that means it's not going to transfer those inks, because there's no gel there. So that's nice and smooth. That's the way I like it. It's looking good. I got my second image here. Normally I'll just do one at a time. Lay down one image, wash the squeegee, wash your hands, let it sit and dry it, and then apply the next one. I'm going to do the second one right away because it's ready to go. And I feel confident. So I'm going to put it where it belongs. I want them right there, right? It's a good spot. Just going to set it into place a little better. Get rid of that extra gel. Save it. Take a look at it. Get that out of there. Looks good to me. Start from the center out, spreading it nice and thin, nice and thin. Nice and even. A little hair, get that hair out that time. Could move a little bit out of place, so very slowly and carefully, so that you're not lifting it up off the board. If it moves, you can twist it back into space that you want it, and then again give it a nice once over, so it's a nice, as even as you can, thin layer between the acetate and the panel. Alright, that's about it. those two have been applied. Now I can let this sit anywhere from 3 days to 3 months. The longer you let it sit, the more dry it becomes. And then it's ready for peeling, which is a whole different bag of bones. Get to it. Okay, so now we get to jump ahead to the removal of the transparency process. After it's been laid down, set to sit for a period of time, anywhere from a day to a week to a month. It's really depending on how thick it is and how you remove it. Now, the technique I'm going to show you is something that over the years, after much experimenting and troubleshooting and struggling, I came up with, and I'm going to show you those tools, how I do it, and save you the trouble of figuring it out yourself. So here's a little nugget for you. Now, in order to do this, there are a few things that you need. You need a source of heat. I use this here heat gun, any other sort of heat gun. Even a hair dryer might work. I've never worked with hair dryer. I think it may be, I don't know, not hot enough. Heat gun is nice and hot. A can of dust off, any brand of sort of aerosol dust spray. A sharp object for finding the corners, like an X-Acto knife, and a burnishing or rubbing tool. Now I use this old Whole Foods spice jar because it has a nice smooth rounded edge, which is good for when you're going to be pushing down to sort of bring the inks and the gel and the gessoed canvas all together as one happy thing. So I'm going to go really quick and explain to you how I came about this. Was that after feeling like it took way too long sitting and waiting for a peel and the uncertainty of whether or not the inks actually adhered, I thought that if I somehow activated the inks to a point where they were vulnerable and soft and then solidified it quickly, it might have a better chance of having it jump from the acetate to the panel. So I through many methods of experimenting, I'm not going to go through it all, I decided that heat and then cold will produce a good peel. So jump ahead many years, heat gun and dust off. Now you get to jump with me here, there, and everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to start with a very simple peel here. It's just a straight up image, it's not colored, and it's not on top of another transparency, which, you know, in collage you can wind up doing down the line. Anyway, start by heating the object up. Keeping in mind, of course, that you don't want it too hot. You also don't want to burn your fingers. You get it hot enough so it starts to feel a little soft at the top. It is really a matter of trial and error, my friends. But I'll warn you, if you get too close, you will bubble paint, you will bubble plastic, you will ruin your painting. So I can't insist enough, experiment before you hit that beloved piece of yours. Now I start to feel like, oh, it's nice and hot. Give that a rest, then get in there, and not too hard. Start really pressing in there. I'll give it a nice once over. This is a nice flat image. There's no edges, so there's no threat of getting caught and peeling. I'm telling you, you keep experimenting, you're going to run into all your own problems, but you'll figure out how to get around them. Anyway, get that going. Heat it up again. Not too close, not too far, nice and hot. Ouch. Ouch. That's good. In there from all sides, really push down. But if you do push too hard, you will spread and smudge the ink underneath, and it comes out dirty and ugly and not very nice and crisp. You lose those nice crisp lines that you can get from a well done one. So you do this a few times, and really it's a matter of feeling. Like you feel like you covered the area entirely, heated up all the spots of ink that you want to get onto your panel, and you've rubbed it down significantly enough to feel confident to freeze. Now quickly, without waiting too long, get your air can upside down, watch your aim, don't hurt anybody yourself. Blast it with some cold, find your edge with the knife, do a peel. There it is. Nice carbon transfer, got the full image. As you go on and to experiment on your own, you can learn how to get parts to not totally take so that you get nice ripples, and there's a lot of spontaneous things that happen during the process that are very nice. Sometimes it sucks, sometimes it's very nice, but that's all part of it, huh? Now enjoy some coffee. Revel in your new transparency pole. Then after you do something like that, then you can get into it, paint around, you can do whatever. Look at this little guy. And this little guy hasn't been pulled yet. I'm gonna pull him next. He's good to go. Let's peel him. Okay, let's get in there. The difference of this one is that I have to be more careful because there are layers of paint that can be burned away. Ow, that's nice and hot, as you can tell. And there are tighter edges, so I gotta be careful when rubbing. Stay on the plastic, because if you start rubbing around, you can start rubbing your painting away, peeling the paint. You don't want to do that unless you do. And if you do, then go right ahead. Anyway, after I peel this guy, you'll notice how the painting of the sky was done after I laid him down, so underneath will have to be touched up. But it's part of the process. I couldn't wait to peel him to start painting in that sky. Because I like to let them sit for at least 5 days, if I can. This process that I've come up with, the heating and freezing, has made it so that if you have a thick enough gel, you can actually do a peel the same day. But I found that to be more rare than if you do it by letting it sit for a few days before you peel. Now, some of the areas that I really want to make sure get in, I give a little extra attention to, like his face and his hand. These are two elements I find to be important. You don't want to lose it. And because this is a hand color transparency, meaning it was colored on the back, on the ink side, it's got more stuff on it that needs to really get in there. See that little rub I did there? I rubbed away part of the painting. You know, it's not a big deal. I go back in there and fix it. Yeah, but that's one of the dangers of this rubbing technique. But you get better at it as you do it. Give this guy one more blast of heat. Yeah, like letting him sit in that heat for a minute. All right, last rub. Okay, rubbing him down, rubbing him down. Okay, give him a blast of cold. Don't get it on your fingers. Now quickly, before you lose it. Gotta move fast. Oh, there's a peel. And you'll notice in person, it's hard to see here, that it comes out very glossy. And because it's colored on the back side, the ink side, you don't lose the nice crisp dark lines of the illustration, and the underpainting looks sweet. There it is. Pulling transparencies 101, very simple. Thank you for watching. Do some experiments and good luck.